Welcome, bienvenue, welcome once again to Cladding Matters. This is the arguably the most watched show that we have in the series of 4 that we run throughout the week. Starts on Tuesday with Property Matters, which alternates sometimes with Construction Matters on Tuesday. That's on Wednesday. We have IPSA Kind of Magic, celebrating all things to do with the Association of Independent Personal Search Agents, of which Hamish is currently chairman. On Wednesday, sorry, on Thursday, we have a Property Quorum, which is a coming together, a bit of a bun fight, that one, a discussion program all about different aspects within the property market that can affect all of us. And finally, today, Cladding Matters, originally talking about the cladding disaster that is befallen the UK economy and now has spread more to safety in property and all aspects thereof. Today, we're talking about a rather knotty situation that is burgeoning. Who pays? Is it a scheme too far for SME builders? And if that sounds mysterious for you, we have the affable Hamish McClay to make all things become clear.
Well, I'm not so sure about the clarity because Steve, I'm sure, will do that for us.
Okay.
What I want to actually sort of is explain something of the complications. Building Safety Act, which was put together in something of a rush. And when you consider that really nothing's been fully resolved from it yet, it really does sort of indicate what a mess the entire thing is. We don't have enough precedents, enough arguments. And to be quite honest, it really isn't like so many other things. And this was a Conservative government, remember. It was not really fit for purpose. And we have a situation now, what is going to be coming in the latter part of this year is a levy to which builders are expected to contribute. Now, the challenge with that, our building industry, like so much of the British, sorry about that, so much of our economy here in the UK is built up by SMEs, the small to medium size sort of businesses.
The bedrock of the UK economy.
Absolutely, absolutely. And they support the building industry tremendously. Now, as you can imagine, though, it is not them that's going to be producing high-rise flats. They're not going to be producing multi-story, although they might be in part involved with it. It's the big construction guys. It's the big businesses, as we know, the bad builders, or the big builders, I should say.
The big builders.
They aren't all bad. Oh, mind you, there's very few that aren't. Oh, sorry, I take that all back. Well, some of it. But the situation is the small to medium-sized builders, they're expected to contribute towards the levy. Yet the biggest remediation challenge and demands, which we actually sort of see, are on properties which these small to medium businesses, enterprises, if you like, they don't go anywhere near them. Right. So why should they be paying into the levy? Now, the whole object of the building safety scenario that Steve's been working on with the Earl of Lytton is to actually make sure that the polluter pays. Now, the polluter pays doesn't expect people, we're not expecting people to run around the park with plastic bags picking up after somebody else's poop if they haven't got a dog themselves. Well, this is a bit like that situation. The general public are being held responsible, or those small to medium-sized businesses being held responsible. Should they be paying that sort of money?
So, Steve, who should be paying?
Well, let's just remind ourselves about why we have this levy. So this year in October, we're going to basically make a certain number of construction industry companies, including the small and medium-sized builders, SMEs, pay for the larger builders who profited from corner cutting in high-rise residential blocks of flats.
Alleged corner cutting.
Yeah. So basically, this is basically spreading the risk across these smaller builders that will have never built blocks of flats, don't have the ability to do it and don't want to do it. they're being made to pay for our larger builders have got some very questionable building practices. And let's have a look at some of those stats, Gareth.
Do you want to look at the stats, or do you want to look
Yeah.
at the initial cladding graphic you sent me?
Well, no, let's do the stats first, because that makes the graphic even more.
All right, Steve, or
punchy.
should I call you Stevie? Here we go.
A good
Let's
file
not.
engineering proponent called me that once upon a time over Christmas, I believe. For this reason, because we're exposing all the unlawful construction. Anyway, let's have a look. So this is a brilliant example of the state of our building in this country. So 4 of the largest housing developers. And what these stats mean are that for the high-rise blocks of flats above 11 meters, the government collected the statistics from the builders themselves that are eligible for remediation under the developer contracts, and added up how many have got life-endangering safety critical defects, the level of defects that put your life in danger. And
so hang on, does that mean you could reasonably say that these buildings are not really fit for human habitation because they are dangerous?
Absolutely. That's why they sort of had to put in 24/7 patrols of people staring for fires, walking around looking for fires 24/7, and charging £1 million a year per development to do it. Now, I doubt that poor person was getting that money. It will be a nice middleman, but it does highlight the problem. You've got to have someone now staring for fires because these blocks are so dangerous. That's the only way.
I'm looking at these figures, and then 2 of them, the majority of their buildings are not safe. It's a bit like saying having someone who fixes your car, and most cars that go to them, their wheels fall off as they drive out.
Yeah. And also, I always say, you just imagine you're in the airport, you're approaching the plane in the little tunnel. You see the door where you jump from the safety into the plane, and you have every hope that that's fine. And then you find out that good old Taylor Wimpey's expanded into planes, and they have continued their level of defect rate into 77% of their planes would put your life in safety critical danger. Right now, you wouldn't get on that plane. And the point that we've said all along with the Polluter Pays campaign is that these defect rates are unacceptable. It should be unacceptable for 77% of people to 77% of a product to be that dangerous and to be allowed to continue with no redress. And as we've seen, in the recent news, when powerful people and corporations are allowed to do what they like, we get to a very dark place. And this is, just as dark as Epstein, because this is affecting innocent people in their homes.
It's Black Mirror sort of stuff, isn't it, really?
But to bring it back to
the reason why the Barratt Homes one is particularly highlighted is because Barratt Homes, they're relatively safe. Only 1/3 of their buildings are dismal failures. And it so happens that Royal Artillery Keys, which is where you are permanently locked in, effectively, is a Barratt home. Yes. Yeah.
No, definitely. And these stats basically show us the level of corner cutting and potentially illegal construction that exists in the large builders that build flats. So why are we mentioning this on a sort of call about SMEs? Well, let's have a look at the next graphic.
Okay.
So your large developers, the non-SME builders, creating this huge liability, a huge I guess there's no other way to say it, just rubbish building, dangerous buildings all over the UK, tens of thousands of them. They're all there, and there's a lot of money to needing to be paid to fix them.
Well, there's a lot of bodge job buildings.
Yeah.
And these are, ladies and gentlemen watching, these are the so-called, what they call master builders. These are the builders who are...
One is Barratt's the master builder. 35% life endangering defect rate.
Right.
So anyway, so And this graphic that that I put together with the help of a good old ChatGPT, it just shows the injustice of it. So the guy on the right is an SME builder in yellow, and he's asking why in October this year he's got to pay to bail out those builders with those appalling defect rates we've just looked at for blocks of flats that the SME builders will never have the money to buy, to build, sorry. He's building flats there on the right. You can see those flats and houses. He's not building huge towers of residential blocks of flats, the big high rise towers on the left. And yet the SME industry is now going to have to bail out from October all the defect rates and remediation costs for the larger builders that have cut corners and in many cases broke the law at the time of construction. Now that really shows the injustice, and what we are trying to do, not just were trying to do, but what we were trying to do at the time of the Building Safety Act was to say, yes, there needs to be a levy, but it needs to be wider. If you're going to bring in SMEs, you need to bring in the product manufacturers as well, because they've sold products, petrol-based products, on people's homes when they're sleeping every night. So they need to be in. But what Polluter Pays would have critically done is would have said, those large builders that we've seen the appalling defect rates, if you've broken the law, you can't get out of it. You're going to have to pay to fix every last building, and not to the watered down PAS standard, the current regulations, right?
Right.
Because as a punishment for not doing the legal thing at the time, you now need to kind of do a betterment really and do the legal thing now. And as as things have got stricter now, it's going to be, probably will improve the building. And that's what we're saying. And, if we had done that and that had been law, then this levy would have been minimized. So the impact on the industry would have been far less, because you're making the wrongdoers pay in full. Now, what's happened is the large builders have got together and said, we're going to partially remediate using the very well-known PAS standard. And then the liability rests then on the building safety levy to pay for all the public funded remediations, and it will basically mean that SME builders are paying blocks of flats so they could never build because they're just not in that business. It's highly unfair, and with Polluter Pays it would be minimized.
It seems unfair and draconian that SME builders that probably had very little to do with the building of these high-rise death traps should then be called in to
bail them out,
to shovel over their hard-earned readies to support an industry that should have been covering it themselves. I mean, obviously now we then hark back to this whole concept of polluter pays, Steve, which is where we really want to be. Yes.
No, absolutely. And just a tiny bit more on the levy. The levy basically gets any builder that builds more than 10 dwellings, right? So that is any small builder that's building an estate of houses, or a small block of flats, not the big high rises, but all under 11 meters. Any builder that builds more than 10 residential dwellings. Right. Now that is disproportionately targeting, them for the crimes of those that build high-rise flats, because the building safety levy is only covering high-rise flats in terms of what the costs are, and then it's pushing the costs of that onto players that had nothing to do with the crisis. And it's telling the larger builders, the whole industry will bail out your corner cutting so you can enjoy not having to be found guilty. And that's really what Polluter Pays did. It would have made them guilty. It would have said this was the law, you didn't keep to it, and it would have determined against them with the evidence. Now, the developer contract stopped that liability, right? This is the thing of the age. The thing of the age is, if there's wrongdoing, firstly, deny it. And I'm thinking about, what's happening in the news right now. Firstly, deny it. Secondly, sort of make up a load of rubbish. But then thirdly, to stop you having to admit wrongdoing, then the government has to intervene. And this is what's happened with the building industry, and say, well, in fact, we're not going to find you liable. Yes, we know you're guilty, but we're not going to find you liable. You sign this contract to fix the last 30 years of blocks of flats, and in return, we'll let you decide the standard you want to remediate to, and we won't find you guilty. We won't find you guilty. And that means there's no liability on them.
It's a get out of jail free card for them. And
there's a
not only that,
yeah,
it's a very dangerous slope to start on, because as you pointed out to me on a number of occasions, Steve, there are thousands of dwellings that should be remediated, thousands of them.
Yeah, and you know, when you have a government that's prepared to intervene to remove the risk of being found unlawful, to basically water down the legislation for building safety so that these companies can walk away without ever any findings of wrongdoing, then you're basically saying it's a law for them and a law for us. Because if you went and stole something or done, do something that's illegal, no one's going to change the law to prevent you going to jail. No one's going to, get you off a massive fine, by changing the law to water it down what you need to do. You're going to have to pay in full. So it's one rule for us and it's one rule for the corporates. And as we're seeing in the news now, I think it's very, very clear that, Prince Andrew, or the former Prince Andrew, isn't being investigated for the sex trafficking. He's being
what we call him in our household is the P artist, formerly known as Prince.
Yeah, exactly. And he's not being investigated, for the alleged, sex trafficking stuff. They're looking at just one area of his wrongdoing, which is the hardest thing to prosecute. It's public affairs and trying to find something wrong he's done in public office. Yes, very hard to prove. He'll probably walk away from it, but I think what they're really doing is trying to say, well, he's faced charges for that. They didn't manage to pin anything of him when he's guilty of something else potentially. Now, I'm not saying he is 100% because it's all alleged, but if he is, we need to focus on that too. And I don't want to sort of say there's too much of a link, but I do think when you're dealing with the building industry and you're not finding them at fault for breaking the law, it's very similar to what's going on with Andrew. If he's guilty of, or suspected of being guilty of areas where there's been, a cover up of loads of victims of sexual abuse, that needs to be investigated too, not just the public life stuff. And he should have been arrested for that far before the public life stuff.
Well, I think they're looking for the minimum they can get away with.
And that's what it is across the board, and that's what we're fighting for. And polluter pays would have been the fairest way out of this, and I think it's becoming more and more obvious with the 1.7 million excluded leaseholders, with the partial remediation standard condemning people to permanently high insurance, and with the ability to hide the fact that these companies broke the law. It's very obvious why they don't want us to succeed. But succeed we will, and succeed we must, for the sake of our society, because it's not just building safety, it's about the fact that we are going down a dark road in many areas of life, especially public life. And unless we turn these big areas of scandal into something where reform, obviously that's a political party now, but reform is a good word as well, because it's basically saying enough is enough. We can't have a building safety crisis where the corporates win, and that's what we've got to. And I think the SMEs are paying the price. SMEs are paying the price because the government want to make them pay to bail out the larger guys. And that, if I was an SME builder and I would be watching this, and I will be sharing it with my SME builders.
I'd be furious.
Yeah, I'd be just lobby. It's well established. The Earl of Lytton scheme would decrease the levy that you would have to pay from October. Just lobby for it. Write to Steve Reed, MHCLG, the Secretary of State, and ask him to implement the Everton scheme so you don't have to pay this unfair levy any more than you have to. That's what I would say to SME builders around the UK. Just get a backbone and stand up for yourself. We've done the hard work, and do it for yourself, because if you don't do it for yourself, you're going to end up paying from October, and it will be a large amount, and it's only going to get worse as more and more buildings find more and more defects. If you want to do nothing.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Steve. buildingsafetyscheme.org. Please go and check that out. Hamish, would you please have the last word?
Could you just bring up that graphic that we have of the builders for a moment, just so we can actually not that one. We know about that one. The other one. That's now just looking at this, and this should emphasize the point that Steve's just sort of made here. 77% of the buildings that Taylor Wimper actually built above a certain height, 77% of those considered to be unsafe.
Most.
And we dropped down 77, 69, 43 in Barrett's, 35. There's a vast number in between. And you actually sort of look at the SMEs involved with this. They're 0%. So why should they be involved at all with what's expected to be sort of going into the levy bucket? Why should they be paying into that when you look at these large builders that turn over billions and billions, and these smaller enterprises are lucky to turn over several million? And somehow or other, there's a big escape. And what you really need to do is support those SMEs, because they make such a significant difference to the building industry altogether. So as an SME, get in touch. But also, as a private individual, get in touch. How dishonest is that really, in reality? That these, if you like, those smaller builders who make such a tremendous job, and they can't escape because they're smaller builders. They tend to be the more local ones as well. So they've got more of a reputation. When we actually looked at those, when you think of the people that were sort of responsible within that particular arena that we just showed you, such well-known names as well.
And I would like to issue an invitation. If any of the builders mentioned here, representatives, would like to come on the show and explain from their perspective how it is right that SME builders pay for their previous defect rate, I would absolutely invite that. And if any SME builders are listening here and would like to come effectively to represent SME builders in the UK and explain how they feel that they're being lumped in with this and they have to effectively pay for stuff they had nothing to do with and no representative of, please, we would absolutely welcome that. If you want to get in touch with us, just get in touch with Hamish or myself. We're both very visible on LinkedIn. Hamish McClay of Search Conveyor. I'm Gareth Wax of Many Purple Hats. If you look for us both on LinkedIn and approach either one of us, we would be absolutely delighted to have you on the show to explain your position. But thank you so much, Steve Day, as ever, a light in the dark, and Hamish McClay, who helped set us up in the first place, and all of you watching. Thank you for your continued. I see there's been a whole bunch of people in and out. I've been watching the figures go up and down. Please do take notice, and if you have people that haven't seen the show that you think might get something out of it, please forward it to them. We welcome new audience members. And until next week, keep your feet on the ground, keep reaching for the stars, and please try and look after your mental health. Bye-bye now.
There's a tale about some folks with hammers and some nails. They'll plunge through the moon